2020 has certainly been a challenging year for all. COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our regional workforce over the past 9 months, and it's unclear how and when we will get back to normal. Where are we now? How did we get here? And where are we going? All from a workforce perspective. Today on the Strive and Thrive podcast. My name is David Remick, and I am the Executive Director of the Alexandria Arlington Regional Workforce Council. We are a group of individuals representing business, economic development, housing and urban development, vocational rehabilitation, organized labor, and community-based organizations who collaborate to bridge the gap between workforce supply and demand. I am honored to be joined by one of our Regional Workforce Council members this morning, Alex Cooley from Northern Virginia Community College. Alex is the Administrator of Economic Development at Northern Virginia Community College. In this role, he guides the college's strategic efforts in workforce and economic development through the use of labor market data, managing strategic grants and projects, and partnering with community organizations and K-12, school districts in Northern Virginia. Now, I've known Alex for years. He is our region's data guy. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. So happy to be here and happy to continue our partnership with Alexandria and Arlington.
Great. Thank you. So, the big question on certain people's mind, not you or I, because we already know, but the people listening in, how has the COVID pandemic affected Alexandria City's workforce?
Yeah, so it's affected everyone across the board. It has affected Arlington in about the same way it's affected the rest of the DC region. So nothing surprising or alarming in terms of the data. So we've seen quite a bit of employment losses in food services, hospitality, some retail jobs, some sales and like administrative support type of roles.
So really, things that rely on foot traffic.
Yes. A lot of jobs that have that kind of human interaction, we'll say, are impacted. But we're recovering. So the region hit a really high unemployment rate at the beginning of the COVID pandemic back in the spring. And that rate has continued to come down every month since April. So we're hopeful that we can, with the vaccine and everything, get back to where we were, which was in a really good place prior to COVID, get back to where we were before, hopefully by the end of 2021.
Yeah, I always make a joke to other people, and I don't even know if it's a joke. It could, the data could actually be right, but I say, Alexandria Arlington has the lowest unemployment this side of the Mississippi River. I'm not exactly sure if that's true or not, but it's probably close. Now, right now, I know we're much higher than we used to be. Last year we were at like 1.6, 1.7. Now we're at like 5% or 6%. But certainly, I think as a region, we're faring better than most. I don't want to say we're doing better than most, and a lot of it has to do with the types of industries that make up our region. But we were talking about about foot traffic, and you and I have discussed this in the past. One of my biggest fears, probably for the past 5 years, was the effect of automation on our local workforce. Can you make any guesses of how Alexandria's workforce might respond to automation post-COVID?
Yeah, so I think based on the jobs that are in Alexandria, I think we're going to see no more of an impact in automation here than we would expect to see nationally. So, and in fact, actually, a lot of jobs in Alexandria are jobs that are less likely to be automated. We think of automation, especially in the next 5 to 10 years, we're really looking at entry-level jobs that can be replaced, at fast food restaurants and places like that. And Alexandria has quite a high concentration of jobs that require a bachelor's degree. They require technical skills and expert skills. So I don't think we're going to see automation impact Alexandria any differently than the rest of the country. In fact, I think Alexandria would be less impacted than most places.
Interesting. Yeah, I was, concerned. A lot of these places, especially looking at our hotels, on some of the the business friendly high use hotels, kind of the mid price hotels, they all have automation at the front end. You don't even need to check in the front desk anymore. You can just get that taken care of and have your key on your phone. And I've always been wondering. Well, I haven't always been wondering, but I've been wondering from here and there over the past few months of, now that a lot of these places are, you know, very quiet. There's not a lot of traffic because we don't have tourists, or we don't have the number of business travelers as we once did pre-COVID. Is a time for a lot of these automational hardwares and softwares to be installed. Um, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of companies are looking at that and maybe seeing how they can adjust their business model in a post-COVID world. But I think what's going to be really interesting is when we start to get back to more of a normal environment,
Hmm.
when the vaccine is widely distributed. I think people are going to want that personal touch. I think, it's kind of like the new generations in school right now, the younger children, they don't really want digital media. They want a book to read. And I think it's going to be the same way. So even though jobs can be replaced by machinery and by technology, I think a lot of those, especially hospitality jobs, people want that person that they can talk to and that face-to-face interaction. Not everyone, I mean, a few people, it appeals to them to
Yeah.
be able to check into a hotel with a app on their smartphone. But then there's a significant number of travelers that are going to want the concierge and the face-to-face interaction. So it'll be interesting for sure to see. But I think it's market demand, and whether the technology exists, I think it does. But
Mhm.
whether companies will actually implement those technologies on a wide scale is
Yeah.
to be determined.
That's a fascinating perspective. Somebody like myself who never really liked the physical interaction with people is, you know, I love the fact that I really don't have to touch anybody or do anything to get something done now. But you're right. I definitely see that, and I think, you know, uh, especially as it relates to going back to school and specifically going back to community college and college and the live person. Um, the notion of being able to have those physical interactions are so important. So that being said, you're from Northern Virginia Community College. There might be people listening to this podcast that do not know what the community college is, what services that it offers, and most importantly, right now, what I care about is uh, what types of services or how the community college is supporting residents during COVID. Alex, what
Mhm.
can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the college has been doing a lot of really cool things in a post-COVID era. So again, most of our classes are online. A lot of our classes, we've adjusted scheduling to make it more appealing to people. So instead of having a 16-week long semester, you can have a class that's in 8 weeks or 12 weeks. So we're getting a lot more flexible with our scheduling, and it's easier to do so because of the online environment. We're doing a lot with local governments using some CARES Act funding. I don't know if we will continue that into 2021. A lot of those programs, a lot of the CARES Act funding had to be spent prior to the end of the year. But NOVA is always trying to partner with local governments, with the Commonwealth of Virginia, to provide resources for students. So things we have done, one program right now is the Reemploying Virginians initiative. We've got Fast Forward, which buys down the cost of continuing education classes for Virginia residents. There is all sorts of different programs that you can access through Nova, both if you're wanting a degree, so if you want to start with your associate's degree, or if you're just looking for some short-term training, if you were looking to maybe get an industry association kind of credential, an IT credential or a healthcare credential. We have all of those options as well. Again, most of them being online, at least for the foreseeable future. So really convenient to people's schedules. A lot of people maybe wouldn't have been able to consider higher education because of a job or other commitments, but now that we're able to deliver those services in your home, widespread across the region, we've actually seen an uptick in the number of students that have registered for classes this semester,
Right.
which is great because education across the board in terms of the national landscape, enrollment has gone down.
Excuse me, an uptick. from this through based on this past year, or uptick versus last year?
Versus last year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
That's great.
more students, and it's a Northern Virginia kind of cool phenomenon. George Mason University, same way. They've had an increase in their enrollment. But if you look across the country, there's been a pretty big decline. So we're doing all that we can to support our students. We have a lot of wraparound support services that have gone virtual. So advising and career services and all of those kind of supports are still there. They're just done in a virtual environment now. So I encourage anyone that's interested in NOVA. We have over 100 degree programs and all sorts of options for pretty much any career field you could want in this region. It's at nvcc.edu.
I'd like to get into that, but first I want to shoehorn in a plug for the Alexandria Workforce Development Center. You mentioned a variety of funding streams that you have now and potentially be going after in the future to provide tuition assistance for individuals. If you are unemployed or underemployed and interested in taking courses, specifically courses that lead to in-demand certification at Northern Virginia Community College, please go to the Alexandria Workforce Development Center. The community colleges and the Alexandria Workforce Development Center's information will be broadcasted on this podcast at some point during our filming of the show. But we could potentially help you to get that tuition assistance. Going back to all the different programs that you provide, not just over at the campus on Beauregard, but the campuses that you have all over the Greater Washington region, Northern Virginia region. A slip there. We work in the Greater Washington region, but Northern Virginia Community College is in the Northern Virginia region, and also what you have online. What career paths do you think residents should consider taking right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm looking at the impacts to employment in our region from COVID, and what hasn't really been impacted and what's kind of grown is healthcare. And IT continues to grow, in our business and finance sector. So those professional services. So if you're a student and you don't know what you want to do, I think definitely look at healthcare, look at IT, see if it could be a fit for you. If someone already has an idea of what they want to study, I don't want to dissuade them from pursuing that. I think, if people are happy in their jobs, then that's a win-win for everybody. So if you really want to do something that's not healthcare or IT, please continue that path forward. But if you're not sure, we have some assessments at NOVA that you can do on our website to kind of help you figure out if something might be a good fit for you, and it will link you to the programs that we offer that might fit your interests. Healthcare, IT, I know we say it a lot, and we said it pre-COVID. That was kind of our big drivers of employment here locally, and it's going to continue.
Of our workforce.
Yeah, and they've not been impacted.
Also a large chunk of the demand. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Healthcare obviously has had some impact. It occurs to me that there are a lot of, one of the things that I saw early on in the pandemic were a number of dental hygienists that were switching over to volunteer at the hospitals because, no one was going into the dentist's office, so there are changes there. When I look at career pathways, I look at it not just for the on-ramp, but where people can go from point C, D, and E to get to Z. And in that spirit, we have another great institution besides Northern Virginia Community College in Alexandria City. We have Alexandria City Public Schools, and there are incredible career technical education programs and their Governor's Academy for Health Sciences. And you mentioned George Mason University before. How does that all link up? If I'm going to invest time and effort into a career pathway early on in my life, how do I ensure that there is education for me after I graduate from high school?
Yeah, that's a great question. So research and data. So look at the data. Exactly. Come to NOVA's website. We've got all the data you need. But making sure there's credentials, they're stackable. If you want a career in healthcare is a pretty easy one. We've got it mapped out. You can start as a nursing assistant, move on into nursing, then move into management. And there's degree programs along the way, if you want to get your associate's degree and then your bachelor's in nursing and then even a master's degree. So it's really just kind of examining and asking questions of your counselors. If you're a high school student, making sure that you're asking all the questions that you want at Nova, at Mason, at any institution of higher education. There's going to be advisors and counselors and pathways. So making sure you ask those questions. I think one thing we tell people is, it's important to find your career, and I think that is super true, but it's also important to build those skills along the way in case you want to pivot. I've pivoted in my career. I did not start out in workforce or economic development, but a lot of the skills that I had in my first career translated very nicely into what I do today. So it's really too about skill development. And how do you take these skills that you're learning in high school, in the community college, at the four-year university, or on the job, and translate that into something else if you decide maybe it's not something that you're really interested in doing, or if there's, something that happens in the future and maybe your job isn't as in demand anymore, but you can take the skills that you've learned and switch into something else.
Yeah, and when you're talking about asking questions, there are several questions that are important. I think one of the biggest ones is, how does one enroll into Northern Virginia Community College?
Yeah, so we've got a great admissions website. If you go to nvcc.edu, and there's a button at the top that says Future Student, and you just click on Future Student, and it'll take you to where you need to be, tell you all about our different programs and pathways.
Excellent. That was a great amount of information over the past few minutes that you shared with us. I would like to thank you, Alex. Alex is our guest today from the Northern Virginia Community College. This is David Remick from the Alexander Arlington Regional Workforce Council. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.